Hello, it's episode 2 of the Fantasy Football Malpractice Show, brought to you by Razzball. I am Donkey Teeth, Dr. Donkey Teeth on this show, and I'm joined by the Boof. What's happening down there in Atlanta, the Boof?
Oh man, not too much. Had to put on a headband today because I had a hat on last time with my quarantine hair. No matter, unless it's basically slicked back with some kind of product, it just dangles in my eyes and drives me absolutely crazy. So when I'm at home, it's either a hat or a headband or something. It's really ridiculous. But other than that, just maintaining, man, just all we can do.
Well, I think that's a pretty common issue these days. The hair problems. I think clippers are going out of stock on Amazon. My lady's been cutting my hair with like paper scissors, just around the back and sides. We don't have any hair. I mean, I could have ordered some sort of specialty hair scissors, but I never did. I'm actually, some of our audience may know, but a lot of it probably doesn't. I'm actually a yoga instructor, and I've been thinking I'm going to grow it out, get some street cred, some really long locks. I'm probably not going to do the dread thing. We'll see how it turns out.
But you should do a man bun.
Well, yeah.
That's tremendous yoga cred right there.
At some point, there will be a man bun. We'll see.
Yeah.
I just don't know how it's all going to – I've never gone long, so
okay.
This is about as long as it normally gets here. But
I'd like to see it. I think that'd be real nice.
Yeah.
I think you can pull it off.
I like the headband, though, and actually it's coincidental that you're wearing that because I'm wearing my Uncle Rico shirt. Uncle Rico shirt for you, yeah.
Over the mountains.
Back in 82. So, it fits in well, and I had my Swagwire shirt on last week. So.
Yeah, absolutely. Kind of a similar, those guys are parallels of each other.
Oh yeah, I mean that's they were didn't you see last year Uncle Rico came?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and Rico came first basically before Minshew was ever a thing, but if it was reversed, I would think that Rico was based off Minshew. Like an older Minshew or something like that.
He plays it well for sure.
Yeah.
So Boof, what we're going to talk about here is the potential of sports coming back. And, we're hoping that there's going to be a football season. I think that there will. I'm an optimist. What are your thoughts here?
Yeah, I mean, there's been some positivity coming out, which is nice. I mean, this whole offseason, I really dug into Devy and Dynasty and all this stuff, putting out rankings and lists and really got into it. And then I was like, I'm doing all this and like we may not have a season the first year I'm ever really getting super into it. But it seems like now we might. I think it's going to look different, but I'm optimistic as well with some new information coming out. Yeah.
Yeah, we've really cranked it into high gear this season at Razzball with our fantasy football content. And, actually, I think it's come at a really beneficial time, I guess I would say, because people are looking for something to distract them and there's no sports going on.
Yeah.
Baseball is really taken a hit as far as people being interested in fantasy baseball, which Razzball is known for the fantasy baseball content.
Yeah.
Hopefully it comes back, with a vengeance once we actually have a baseball start date. But football there still seems to be a high level of interest, whereas baseball, it's like, I don't know. I myself am not interested. It's just like I'm just trying not to get my hopes up, I guess, to be disappointed that there is no baseball. But I think there is going to be sports seasons, and I think that's going to start to come out here pretty soon.
Yeah, and just another note about baseball. There's something different about football and the cycle. NFL does a real good job, to their credit, of like the draft and the free agency is a whole thing, and it just kind of like there's a cycle, and even in the off season there's exciting time points where baseball doesn't have that. I think partly because the minor league system is such a long process, whereas in football, I mean, rookies come in and they're hitting the ground running immediately and are valuable for our fantasy purposes. So baseball is such a slow burn and it's really fun, but football's got this cadence throughout the whole year where if you're into the dynasty thing, I mean, you can just there's all these little checkpoints where you get excited all over again.
Yeah, for sure. I think baseball has that, but the problem is such a big piece of that is the season. And if you take that away, then it's, but yeah, I mean, the season is, baseball should be a little bit shorter, in my opinion. I don't
Probably.
doubt. There's no stopping capitalism, is the thing. You
Yeah.
know, communism, you can shut things down, and maybe there won't be sports for a season, but there's just so much money in the NFL and Major League Baseball and the NBA. They're gonna all the resources will go to these rich people trying to get richer.
I know, and we'll consume it is the
Yeah.
thing. We will consume
We'll
it.
enable for sure.
Feeding the monster.
Yeah. So yeah, I think that there will be a football season. I think the other nice thing about football is that we get to have hopefully baseball come first, and kind of be the guinea pig, and we'll see. If there's issues. I mean, people are gonna catch this virus throughout the season. It's kind of inevitable, and they'll have their systems in place to try to stop it from spreading. And people probably won't care that
It'll just be there needs to be a DL spot and a CV spot for coronavirus, so you can stash some guys.
Yeah, maybe a couple of them. Yeah, we've talked about a couple things on the Razzball Fantasy Football podcast that could be impacted. One thing we talked about in our group chat on Twitter was the potential of increasing the value of quarterbacks, because I mean, if your quarterback catches the virus and has to be out for 3-4 weeks, I mean, I guess if you've got it, maybe the whole season. I don't know. I don't know how long this.
I think no. I think. I work. I work in a hospital, so I've seen some patients, pediatric kids, but I think it's a 2 to 3 week. We have precedent for this. Actually, Sam Darnold caught mono. What was it, 3 to 4 weeks, I believe, and I think that's probably a similar timetable.
As long as you're not on your deathbed,
Yeah, no, and I mean, hopefully it won't be. But that's actually a pretty good precedent, a guy catching mono. So we can maybe just base everything off that.
Well, and a lot of people kind of poo-poo that mono, but I really think that affected Darnold the whole season. Yeah, I think that's a tough thing to come back from, and it has an effect on your body.
And I definitely think coronavirus would too, for sure.
Right.
I mean, you're not going to come back week 1 and just be like the same guy.
Well, most likely. I mean, a lot of people get it and don't have any,
Also
symptoms.
true.
So, yeah, who knows? There's a lot of moving parts here, and we're just guessing. The other thing was rookies, and how OTAs and training camp and all that's going to play out, and their ability to pick up a new playbook and a new system, and kind of get into a new locker room and mesh with a team could be affected too. So especially wide receivers, B-Don and I talked about this on the podcast. Again, the running backs, maybe you can just kind of come in and take the ball and do your thing. But wide receivers, there's a lot more chemistry going on with the quarterback, and tight ends too. Tight ends, we don't usually expect a whole lot in the first season. So just something else to think about.
Yep, for sure.
Boof, next up is your article of the week. I don't know if we're going to do this every week, but you have selected an article for us to talk about. It was written by a fella named Scott Barrett. It's called Upside Wins Championships. I like the sound of that. I'm an upside guy. I think you are too. So tell me a little bit about this article. I did not read it. I'm just coming in winging this stuff. So tell me what's up.
That's cool. Going with the theme of fantasy malpractice, a little bit of a medical, underlying current maybe. One thing we do is review other research, other articles in the medical community. So I thought it might be a fun thing to see what some other people are writing. And Scott Barrett's been a guy I have followed for a while. He's a sharp dude. Used to be over at PFF Fantasy, I believe, and now is at a website called fantasypoints.com, which I think he started with some other guys. But yeah, Upside Wins Championships. Do a quick rundown. Basically, he starts off comparing fantasy drafting as like a portfolio that you may have in stock market investing, which is something I've talked about with my friends a lot, especially when it comes to like best ball drafts, where you kind of think of your roster as having all sorts of, the high floor safe picks and the boom bust later picks and this kind of thing. And thinking about just getting guys that are going to beat their ADP, right? And one thing he points out is that, so we think if we have the best value across our portfolio or team, then we're going to profit. But unlike the stock market, where you just are trying to accrue value, and so you just want every single investment to get a little bit of profit, we are competing against people in our leagues. We're not just competing against ourselves. And so, the best values may not necessarily be guys who just beat their ADP. For an example, like you draft some guy you like at wide receiver 56, he returns value of wide receiver 40. Great, you made profit, but wide receiver 40 isn't doing anything for you in terms of winning a league. And so he kind of talks about, unlike monetary investment in the stock market, a player's fantasy upside is typically far more valuable than his downside is detrimental. Certainly at a later point in the draft, downside basically becomes irrelevant, which is much different than if you're thinking about it like a stock market where downside is always losing all your money. But in fantasy, it's just not quite the same. Gives an example of James White, a popular kind of high floor, safe value play who was drafted around running back 25 last year, returned running back 19 value, but he was only on 7.7% of championship teams. His, +2 fantasy points per game over a waiver wire guy is basically nothing. So he's not giving you any kind of competitive advantage. We want to shoot for guys that can be league winners, and there may only be 2 or 3 in any given year. Looking back like 2017, Kamara, Hunt, Marvin Jones had that kind of skyrocketing elite value at a fraction of the price. Mahomes and Connor in 2018, and Lamar Jackson, Eckler, and A.J. Brown last year, just to name a couple that really propelled teams to the championship or to winning leagues. So anyway, kind of sums it up at the end. In fantasy, 1 home run is more valuable than a bunch of singles. I think this is a great way to think about it, because a lot of times you do think, I just want a bunch of singles. I just want guys who are going to return value, but who really cares if you don't have that guy to put the team on the back, so to speak. If you swing for the fences and whiff, you always have waiver wire to provide some production for you. One thing he also throws out there is, I don't know how he came up with 8.5 points, but he basically says, 8.5 PPR points a game is essentially zero. It's essentially worthless. Guys like Auden Tate and spot starts and things like that can give you that sort of value. So when you're shooting for he's going to at least give me 8 to 10 points, you can find that anywhere. And I totally believe this. That's how I've played for a couple of years now, especially my auction leagues. I mean, I've been a hardcore stars and scrubs guy because I want those elite guys who are going to be the backbone. And then I trust myself to find waiver pickups or kind of like, boom plays, really cheap boom plays. And so I've played like that. I think he articulated it really well. It's a fairly long article. I'd suggest anyone to go read it. It's actually really good and just lays it out nicely. But at the end of the day, draft guys who can be elite. Don't worry about if they have a 0 floor, and don't waste time with safe floors.
Yeah, my only concern here is that we're a little bit too like-minded for this show, because I really would reiterate everything you said. And actually, this applies a little bit more to fantasy baseball, but there's something called Paretos Principle. And, the itch is he's a prospect writer over on the baseball side. Him and I have been talking about this for years. And I never knew what the principle was called until last night. I came across it actually reading some investment stuff. And this guy Pareto, he was an Italian. He noticed that his pea plants, like 20% of his pea plants were yielding 80% of the peas.
Okay.
And then he started to notice that the same pattern everywhere in the world. And so the idea is that 80% of results come from 20% of actions. And you can, if you start to look around you, you kind of see it. If you work in an office job, you might notice that, hey, there's 20% of the people doing 80% of the work. And then you got these 80 other percent of the people that are just kind of sitting around picking their asses.
Writing Razzball articles.
Exactly. So in baseball, we kind of applied it to, there's a hitter will go on this month-long tear and they'll put up like half of their stats in a month.
Yeah.
And if you can just get, 20 of those games in that month, it can change your entire season if that guy's red hot. And there's certain players that get really hot in baseball. Football, it's a little bit different. We got a shorter season. Things aren't going to normalize as much. But the way that I kind of apply it to football is that, we might end up dropping 80% of our team. So maybe even more. You look at your team at the end of the season. So few of those players that you drafted are still on your team. One qualifier that I will put in there is it does depend on league depth. If you're in a 16-team league, then those guys that you're talking about, those floor guys, have a little bit more value. There is value in those guys that are putting up what in a 10-team league you wouldn't even think twice about. So there is all kinds of variables here, but I really like this idea of Pareto's principle because you're going to miss. It goes back to what we talked about when we were breaking down what fantasy football malpractice meant in the first show. We're going to swing and miss a lot. They just got to keep shooting. And as long as we hit those home runs, and to go back to your investing, the way that the article that I was reading about Pareto's principle applied it to investing is that, 20% of your investments are going to add up to 80% of your profits. And 80% of your investments, well, it's kind of a moving target here, but 80% of your investments might be losers. You might lose money on those, but as long as you have that one huge winner, it's going to make up for all of it. And like you said, Lamar Jackson, Patrick Mahomes, the past 2 seasons, they won so many leagues. It didn't even really matter who else you had on your team. If you ended up, like you said, with Lamar Jackson and Eckler on your team last year, then you won.
Yeah. And I'm actually starting a brainchild on a future article about, with the advent of DFS content, daily fantasy, I think season-long players can use that content to cherry pick waiver guys to just plug and play. And so it actually makes this idea of, having your foundational pieces and everybody else is fungible. Everybody else is exchangeable based on matchup. And if you land a Terry McLaurin, great, but otherwise just burn and churn, 50% of your roster every week almost, because you want to go matchup based and you want to hit the guys that are still going to give you an 8-point floor, but could go 16 points, 20 points, given matchup, given other injuries, etc. And they can be found. I mean, a lot of my season leagues, I lead the league in waiver pickups just because, and not even expensive ones, just $0, because I'm just always churning that bottom of my roster. So, and with the DFS content out there, I think even if you don't play DFS, you can use it to say who is the cheap guy, and that guy's probably unrostered in your leagues. So if we have a moment, I was just going to ask you, so give me an example. I know it's on the spot, but who's a guy you would say is that kind of guy you're going to shoot for late that has that humongous upside rather than kind of a safe floor kind of guy?
Oh, a lot of the rookies, I think that's probably my go-to, and it becomes tough when you like to take the shiny rookies. Like, I know we're both going to be in on Jonathan Taylor this year. You don't want to end up with too many of them on your team. But a guy like AJ Dillon is going to be cheap. I'm excited. I'm excited about him and Zach Moss. Like, you don't want to end up with all of these guys on your team, but maybe go in with an idea of how many rookies you're okay ending up with. I think I'm probably going to fade rookie wide receivers, but I'll grab one, because what I was going to add to what you were saying with the churn is it's actually beneficial to take guys that you're going to know whether you can drop immediately. So you have that roster spot for your churn spot. So, receivers, they take some time to pan out. So maybe that's not the way to go. But running backs, you'll know pretty quick if they're going to have the workload. You may drop a guy. Like, I dropped Alvin Kamara, whatever it was, his rookie season after 4 weeks. And I think I kept Adrian Peterson. He ended up getting traded to Arizona. He wasn't terrible, but I think I ended up dropping him eventually too before he went to – it was just a nightmare. I had Kamara everywhere and dropped him, but
I mean,
Hey,
that's the
that's
thing.
the way it goes. You just
Yeah.
keep shooting, and
Yeah.
you hope to hit that 20%. You'll hit it eventually.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. And I think, I mean, rookies is basically the perfect example for this entire concept because you got to pick a guy with unknown upside. Who has unknown upside? Rookies. We've never seen them play in the NFL before. So I think that's a huge place. And then like second and third year players that walk into new stuff or new scenarios. One guy for me is N'Keal Harry. I mean, he could bust completely again and just be terrible. He maybe is a horrible player and we just don't know it yet. He could also lead the Pats in receiving. I mean, that's the kind of guy that I want to take a chance on. I'd rather him than Jamison Crowder.
Well, I mean, Crowder, you know what he does in PPR. He's going to have his weeks. The other thing, you brought up best ball, and I mean, players like Crowder, he'll have his big weeks, and it's nice to have guys like him because there are going to be bye weeks, and rosters are so small in best ball relatively. Some players are going to get hurt. So every league is a little bit different, and yeah, you want the right amount of upside, and you're probably a player like me that can go a little bit overboard with upside. There's
I
certain leagues
do.
where there's no such thing as going overboard. If you're in a 10-team league, which I don't think I have any 10-team leagues anymore, but I've played in them.
Yeah.
If you're in a 10-team league, there's no such thing as too much upside. Really, you're going to cut so many of those guys. So
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. I mean, league size definitely matters. So we'll leave it at that. I think we have a couple more topics.
yeah. So worst takes of 2019, huh? You're really you're gonna turn the knife here on me,
It's
huh?
the name of the show.
What were yours?
Yeah. I'm gonna start with, man. I named an article, "Chris Godwin is not a value." That was the headline. At the time, he was going at around wide receiver 20. Shout out Matt Bowie, Razzball senior football editor, who, I was just a green little noob, still am, but like literally this is like my third article for Razzball. And I was like planting my flag, like Chris Godwin is not going to do it. And Bowie's a Bucks fan and he called me out immediately. So like I was right immediately head to head with my editor. It was all good fun, but basically I didn't think the Bucks would produce 2,000-yard receivers. Arians offense, I dug back into the history books, only had done that like 3 times in I think 10 seasons. And the average wide receiver 2 in an Arians offense finished as the wide receiver 24. I mean, that's nothing to shake a stick at, but wasn't showing me tremendous value. And of course, Godwin finished as the wide receiver 2 in total points and points per game. Evans finished as the wide receiver 5 in points per game. So they both just smashed. Tampa Bay defense was terrible. Jameis played a legendary version of YOLO ball. Didn't give 2 shits about throwing, 30 touchdowns, 30 picks. Just absolutely insane. But worked for fantasy and got him a backup job. So, but Godwin was awesome. He played 50% in the slot. He just dominated out of there. He'll continue, I think, to do that again this year. And now he's the ADP wide receiver 5. So, I look like a real fool there.
But you're in good company there. I don't know if you saw, we did, Rudy and I and Gray did a draft kit videos last year for football. And Rudy did one video that was busts. And Chris Godwin was his bust at wide receiver. It was actually pretty funny, though, because a quick plug here for Rudy's projections. He just released the first rendition. He's always tweaking those things. Like pretty much every day from now until the end of time, he's going to be making tweaks to his model and trying to dial things in. And he's always catching little things.
We caught that Chenault had 0 rushing. And so he already tweaked it a little bit on day 1, added some of these hybrid guys, gave him some rushing yards.
So last year he made a tweak when he did the bus. He went through his projections and he saw Chris Godwin way lower than then everyone was drafting him, and that was his bust. And then about 2 weeks later, because we did these videos pretty early in the off season or preseason, it wasn't super early. It wasn't like right now. But 2 weeks later, all of a sudden, Godwin was in his top 20, and he's like, well, I probably shouldn't have put him as a bust.
Oh,
So, yeah, you and Rudy were in the same boat, though. I mean, except he made a video about it. You just wrote an article.
Yeah. I mean, video's a little bit more substantial, it seems. I mean, I learned a lesson, just, maybe not being so locked in, but I still feel like I had the data to back it up, but it didn't play out.
Well, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention Kerryon Johnson. I owned Kerryon Johnson everywhere last year. I'll own him everywhere until the end of time.
So you're not going to learn your lesson.
No, there's no lesson to be learned here. The universe is not fair. But Kerryon, he got hurt. So I'm just going to say I was right. And
I mean, refresh my memory, not to interrupt, but like he looked pretty okay until he got injured, right? I mean, he was having like a mid-range RB2, maybe.
Yeah, he was okay. I mean, I was going out saying that he was going to be first rounder this year. He was going to have that kind of a season. So he was not performing at that level, but he did have some tough matchups, and he got injured early. So, injuries happen. I can take the L there. That's my fault, guys.
It happens.
That was one of the 80% that I missed on, but stick around for the 20%.
Yeah. My next one is I was touting Juju a lot last year. I think I wrote these ADP kind of grudge matches where I'd pit three guys in a similar ADP against each other. But Juju won his matchup against, I think, Antonio, which looks okay, and somebody else. But at the end of the day, I was real high on Juju. I mean, I said he's going to be a top 5 receiver. I said he has the potential to be wide receiver 1 overall. That did not happen. I kind of thought he was going to get like 150 targets. I thought he was going to increase TDs from the 7 he had in 2018. And we know what happened. I can sit here like you with Kerryon Johnson and, list off all the excuses. But at the end of the day, Juju was terrible. And he really wasn't that good even before his own injury. And the Pittsburgh just went into a shell. They went full defense. They went, winning 1-score games. They were happy to win games 6-3. And I mean, just crushed all fantasy value, with those quarterbacks they were running out there. So,
well, hey, I mean, it's tough to blame you on that one. He was a first rounder. Everybody was taking him in the back end of the first round.
Yeah.
He never fell much past the turn. If you got him in the second round, you were really excited last year.
Yep.
I was on board too. I was buying in, and actually I'm now like so far off the bandwagon. I didn't think I was that low on him until I started posting my rankings back in December, and it was Kerryon Johnson and Juju Smith-Schuster were the two, and Joe Mixon were the 3 names that everybody jumped all over. I had Mixon and Juju way too low for everybody. I got Juju, I think, at 48th overall. I thought that was generous.
What's back end of 4th round? At the end of the 4th, I guess.
Yeah, I think he's just
and
outside
12
my
teamer.
top 20 wide receivers. He's still really young, but I still think he's got a lot to prove. He's never really done it without AB, and I can't say I trust Big Ben right now coming off the elbow surgery. Once we see it, I could see moving him up, but I'm not going to own Juju anywhere. He's not cheap.
Not at that ranking, you're not for sure.
Yeah. So, I mean, what are you thinking about Juju this year?
Yeah. So you said you would double down with Kerryon Johnson for all eternity. I don't think I would double down again on Juju. I am a little bit like you where, last year was the year I was ready to go in and, plenty of things happened, but I just thought he was safer than he was. I mean, quarterback, no quarterback, AB, no AB. I just thought he could handle it. And at the end of the day, it didn't work. And Deontay Johnson, I really like. He's going to man the outside. Juju's going to bump back into the slot, which I think is good, but probably limits true elite upside, I think, if you're primarily a slot guy. I love slot. receivers. But I wonder if that ceiling, of that top 5 guy, 1 overall potential is just maybe not there for him. Big Ben should breathe some life into it, but yeah, I'm not touting that again. I probably would have him higher than you do. It sounds like I haven't done full rankings, but I think he's a high end wide receiver 2 area, maybe in that 10 to 15 range is where I'd probably feel good about putting him.
He absolutely could. He could be. I mean, we've seen him do more than that before. I was going to say, when I said about Kerryon, it was kind of in jest. I am going to buy him this year. I'm buying him in Dynasty. His value is very low.
I'm sure.
I think that he can put up, it's going to be a mess with him and Swift in that backfield. But I think he can put up RB2 numbers and Swift can put up flex numbers. There's going to be frustrating weeks where you guess the wrong one. If somebody gets hurt, then it's a whole different story. But if Swift comes out and he's just tearing it up and Kerryon has very little workload, then I'll admit when I'm wrong. I was wrong on him last year. I was wrong. I thought the Lions were going to be content with him and maybe spend a late round draft pick on a running back or bring a journeyman type in to take a little load off Kerryon. I didn't think that they were going to spend an early second rounder on a really talented running back like DeAndre Swift. So yeah, I've been wrong, and I could be wrong in buying him this year. But again, his upside is really high, and his price is not going to be that high. So I'm buying, but it could just totally blow up. And by week 5, I could be like, get off my team, dude.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I mean, I think that's fair. Who is do you have another bad take?
I got a couple more. I forgot. I was in on the rookies last year. I was buying the hype on Justice Hill and Darrell Henderson and Darwin Thompson. I owned a lot of them. I had a lot of best ball shares of that group of guys, and it did not work out well. But I did end up with a lot of Lamar Jackson best ball shares, and I won. I don't know if you played in the draft best ball championship last year, but I think I won 6 leagues or something like that, mainly because of Lamar Jackson. So it just a testament to that, that upside thing. Just keep taking those guys that can have that potential to win a league.
For sure.
I had a lot of Kyler Murray. It was pretty much I drafted Lamar Jackson or Kyler Murray, but again,
that's great. I don't know what happened with me and Lamar Jackson. I mean, I was always a fan. I don't know. I early in the drafting season when best balls were kicking off, like I just didn't wind up with him, and then I kind of made up for it and had a bunch of shares at the end, but I wish I would have had more. I wasn't not in. I just somehow sometimes drafts just kind of like don't quite fall the way that you think they will, and you just kind of wind up with less than you want.
You know what happened? You were all aboard the Kyler train, and I don't blame you for that, but they were going in that same area. So there were a few times where I doubled up on those guys and ended up with both of them. But sometimes it was, pick either or.
Real nice. That's
and
great.
Then last year I was in on Mahomes too. I loved him as a late second round draft pick, early third rounder, what might have been had he not gotten injured. But he was not on pace. I thought that he could reproduce that 50 touchdown season. The odds were against it. History says that it's very difficult to do. But I thought that I still think he's a really special guy, and I think he's going to do it again in his career. But I whiffed.
Yeah, and I think it could be as soon as this year. But he'll probably have one other season at least with 50, maybe 2 more. I mean, I think the sky's the limit. It's just back-to-back might always be a tough one to bet on.
Yeah, and it kind of depends. It depends if they want him to. Like, if they wanted him to throw 60 touchdowns, I definitely think he could in the season, but they're going to give the running back some work. It's not necessary at times. I mean, they're going to have a lot of blowouts too.
Right. Why you don't need to throw when you're up 42-0 or whatever.
Right. Yeah. I mean, if you add up his first half touchdowns, first half fantasy numbers, that's going to be better than a lot of quarterbacks numbers, and it was for the first 5 games of the season or something like that.
Yeah.
Boof, What else? I have lost track of. I think we're probably getting close to around 30 minutes, don't you?
I think we're in good shape, but we probably need to wrap it up. I got non-football thought of the week or non-football media suggestion for all you folks out there. I came across a Spotify channel, or I think it's basically a channel, Nordic folk, and I clicked on it and I was like, that sounds interesting. And it's pleasant. It's very pleasant. There's one band in particular I've ended up downloading and adding to a couple of my personal playlists. The band is called Tuva Band, Tuvaband. Very moody, but it's got kind of an accent because everybody's from that part of the world, and just kind of a cool thing. Maybe if you like kind of slowish, folksy type stuff for the background music, give it a whirl.
I was going to try to pull it up and play it in the background here on Zoom for us, but I can't figure out how to get it up right.
Oh, that's a bummer.
That's what she said. Thanks, Boof. I will check that out, and if I can figure out how to play it in here, I'll put it in without violating any copyright. I'm sure that would be very illegal, but I'd still do it.
I think they'd be for it. I don't think they're huge. They'd like the publicity probably.
Yeah, I have a Spotify subscription, guys. Watched a couple movies the other day. Just Mercy with Jamie Foxx and Michael B. Jordan was pretty good. That's the story. I think it was the 80s. Jamie Foxx was wrongly convicted of a murder, and Michael B. Jordan comes in and is defending him. It was down in Alabama, very racist. So that was good. That was a good story. And I watched Ford versus Ferrari. That one was pretty good too. I didn't have very high expectations. And then we also just watched the first season of Dead to Me with Christina Applegate. That was a good show.
Yes, I watched the first episode with my wife a couple nights ago. I was hooked pretty quick.
It's a quick season. It's an easy watch, and there's 2 seasons out now. So we're gonna go start the second season probably right now.
Nice. Well, get after it, man.
We'll do. So, Boof, we'll be back at it next week. If you guys have any requests for the show, hit us up in the comments over here on YouTube or at Razzball. Go check out, Boof's been doing some film review articles. I just dropped my top 250. We'll link this stuff in the comments or the description of the show on YouTube. And then Rudy's projections are out too. So we'll link those in there too. And he's always open if you've got thoughts on his projections or think that he messed something up. He's very interactive with them. So, Boof, anything else before we sign off?
Nope. If you want to find me on Twitter, I'm not under Boof anymore. So it's just search for ALFFRED. I'll come up. I've got Tua Tagovailoa as my avatar. So
terrible. Let's get that Boof handle back. We'll get the Boof handle back soon.
Peer pressure is a wonderful thing. I'm sure it'll come around.
I'm at DonkeyTeeth87 on Twitter. Subscribe to this show. We got some subscribers last week. We appreciate you guys. Give us the thumbs up or whatever that is. And we'll catch you next week. Later, Boof.
All right.